Captain Hoyan Woo Kim looked out the window of his ship and saw the massive alien world growing larger. Vex Prime was beautiful in a cold way. Purple oceans covered most of the planet, and silver cities floated in the clouds like metal flowers. But Hoyan Woo felt nervous. Something was wrong. "Captain, we will reach the docking station in 20 minutes, said his pilot, Lieutenant Sang Ho Park. The young man sounded excited. This was his first trip to the alien capital. Han Woo nodded, but kept watching the planet. After 50 years of peace with the Vexstar Empire, humans were finally getting better trade deals. At least that was what King Morthok had promised. The alien ruler wanted to meet Earth's best scientists and diplomats. He said it was time for humans to become full partners in the galaxy. Behind Hoyan Woo, ship's most important passengers were getting ready. Dr. So Young Park was checking her research files one last time. She was Earth's top scientist, and her work on energy shields had made human ships much safer. She was also Sang Ho's older sister, and she always worried about him. "Sang Ho, remember to stay with the ship," she told her brother through the speaker system. "Don't go exploring the alien city by yourself." "I know, sister." "I'm not a child anymore," Sang Ho replied, but he was smiling. Colonel Janae Lee was in the passenger area, cleaning her dress uniform. Even though this was a peaceful mission, she wore her military medals with pride. The colonel had fought in the border wars 20 years ago when human colonies had tried to rebel against alien rule. She lost that war, but she never stopped, believing that humans deserved better treatment. "Colonel, do you think the aliens really want to help us?" asked Ambassador Hajin Choi. The cultural expert was young for such an important job. But she spoke 12 alien languages and understood their customs better than anyone. Janae looked up from her uniform. "I think they want something from us. The question is what?" Dr. Soyoung overheard them talking. She walked over and sat down. "Maybe they're finally ready to treat us as equals. Our technology has improved a lot in recent years. Some of our inventions are even better than theirs. Now, that might be the problem," Janae said quietly. The three women had become friends during the long journey to Vex Prime. They represented the best of humanity, intelligence, strength, and hope for a better future. But none of them knew they were flying into a trap. On Vex Prime, King Morthok stood in his crystal palace looking at reports about human progress. The alien ruler was 12 feet tall with 4 arms and skin like black metal. His species, the Vexstar, had ruled the galaxy. For thousands of years, they were proud of being the smartest and strongest race in known space. But the reports about humans worried him. In just 50 years, humans had gone from primitive space travel to building ships that could challenge Vexstar technology. Their scientists made discoveries that should have taken centuries. Their soldiers learned to fight in ways that surprised everyone. Most troubling of all were the human women. Vexstar females were kept away from important work and rarely allowed to think about science or war. But human women were doctors, generals, and inventors. They created new ideas that changed everything. To King Morthok, this was dangerous and unnatural, Your Majesty, said General Coulter, the king's military advisor. The human ship has arrived. Should we begin the ceremony? King Morthok's 4 eyes glowed red. Yes, let them think they are honored guests. When the galaxy sees what happens to species that grow too quickly, they will remember their place. The new soul docked at the main station without any problems. Captain Hoyan Woo led his passengers through clean, bright corridors filled with alien artwork. Hundreds of different species worked at the station, but they all stopped to stare at the humans. Some looked curious, others seemed afraid. "Why is everyone watching us?" whispered Ambassador Haijin. "Maybe they don't see humans very often," Dr. Soyoung replied. But she noticed the stares too. They reached the main hall, where Vexstar guards waited for them. The aliens were huge, wearing bright armor and carrying energy weapons. Their leader was Captain Velcor, a veteran soldier with scars covering his face. "Welcome to Vex Prime, humans," Captain Velcor said in perfect English. "King Morthok is eager to meet you. Please follow us to the transport." The ride to the palace should have taken 30 minutes, but the aliens took a longer route through the city. Hyenwu realized they were being shown off like prizes. Millions of aliens lined the streets, watching the human visitors with strange expressions. "This is supposed to be an honor," Colonel Janae said quietly, "but it feels like a parade before an execution." Dr. So-young squeezed her friend's hand. "Don't be so negative. They're just excited to see us." But Ambassador Hyjin was studying the alien faces in the crowd. She had learned to read Vexstar emotions during her training. What she saw made her stomach feel sick. The aliens weren't excited or curious. They were waiting for something terrible to happen. The palace was even more beautiful than the pictures. Crystal walls reached toward the sky, and gardens full of strange plants filled the air with sweet smells. But guards were everywhere, more than needed for a simple meeting. King Morthok waited in his throne room, sitting on a chair made from a single giant diamond. When the humans entered, he stood up to his full height. Even Captain Hyenwu, who was 6 feet tall, felt small next to the alien ruler. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," the king said in a voice like grinding metal. "I have waited long to meet the humans who think they can change the galaxy." Dr. So-young stepped forward and bowed politely. "Your Majesty, we are honored by your invitation. We hope this meeting will begin a new age of cooperation between our species." King Morthok's 4 eyes focused on her. "Indeed. Dr. Park, your work on shield technology has been most ... interesting. Tell me, do you believe human females should be allowed to pursue science?" The question surprised everyone. Dr. So-young looked confused. "Of course, Your Majesty. On Earth, anyone can become a scientist if they have the ability and desire to learn." "How fascinating," the king said, but his voice sounded dangerous. "And you, Colonel Lee, do you think human females should lead armies?" Janae straightened her shoulders. "Women and men serve together in our military. Choose leaders based on skill, not gender." King Morthok walked down from his throne, moving closer to the humans. His guards moved with him, hands on their weapons. "Ambassador Choi," the king continued, "do you believe human culture should influence other species?" Hyjin felt the trap closing around them, but she answered honestly. "We believe all cultures can learn from each other, Your Majesty. Exchange of ideas makes everyone stronger." The king stopped just a few feet away from the human delegation. His metal skin seemed to glow with anger. "Then you admit it," he said. "You spread your dangerous ideas like a disease. Corrupt the natural order with your female scientists, your woman warriors, your cultural poison." Captain Hyenwu stepped in front of his passengers. "Your Majesty, I don't understand. Came here in peace, seeking friendship." King Morthok laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Peace. Came here carrying the seeds of revolution. Your species grows too fast, learns too quickly. Your females think they are equal to males? This infection threatens the stability of our entire galaxy." Guards surrounded the humans, weapons raised. More aliens entered the throne room, including news reporters with cameras. This was all being recorded. "I hereby charge these human females with genetic terrorism and cultural contamination," King Morthok announced. "They will be executed as an example to any species that dares to challenge the natural order." Dr. So-young, Colonel Janae, and Ambassador Hyjin were grabbed by guards and forced to their knees. Captain Hyenwu and his crew were held back. "Forced to watch. This is murder," Hyenwu shouted. "They are diplomats. They have protection under galactic law." "I am galactic law," King Morthok replied. "And I have decided that human females are too dangerous to live." The cameras rolled as the 3 women faced their death with courage. Dr. So-young looked directly at the camera and spoke her final words. "Humanity will remember this. We'll never forget." Colonel Janae refused to bow her head. "You think? You're showing strength, but you're only proving that you're afraid of us." Ambassador Hyjin smiled sadly at Captain Hyenwu. "Tell our people that we died believing in a better future. Tell them not to give up hope." What happened next was broadcast across the galaxy. The execution was designed to be as brutal and humiliating as possible. King Morthok wanted every species to see what happened to those who challenged. Vexstar ruled that Captain Hyenwu and his surviving crew were forced to watch every terrible moment. When it was over, they were thrown back on their ship and told to leave immediately. As the new soul flew away from Vex Prime, Hyan-Woo sat in his captain's chair and wept. Lieutenant Sang-ho had lost his sister. The entire crew had lost friends and heroes. But more than that, humanity had lost something precious. And irreplaceable, Captain Sang-ho said, his voice broken with grief. What do we tell Earth? Hyan-Woo looked at the recording device in his hands. It contained footage of the execution that would soon reach every human colony, every human ship, every human heart. We tell them the truth, he said. We tell them that the galaxy has shown us what it really thinks of humanity, and then we let them decide what to do about it. Neither man knew it yet, but those words would change the course of galactic history. The age of human diplomacy was ending. The age of human war was about to begin. Admiral Dong Hyan-Yoon was drinking coffee in his office when the emergency signal came through. The red lights on his desk started flashing, and the communication screen showed Captain Hyan-Woo's face. The younger man looked like he had aged 10 years in just a few days. Admiral Hyan-Woo said, his voice shaking, I have terrible news from Vex Prime. We need to speak immediately. Dong Hyan had been Earth's top military leader for 15 years. He'd seen war, death, and suffering. But nothing prepared him for what he watched in the next hour. The execution footage was clear and brutal. 3 of humanity's best women murdered for no reason except fear and hatred. How many people have seen this? Dong Hyan asked when the recording ended. The aliens broadcast it across the galaxy. Hyan-Woo replied. Every species with communication systems received it. They wanted everyone to see what happens when you challenge the Vexstar Empire. Dong Hyan closed his eyes. He thought about Dr. Sol-Young Park, who had helped design the shields that protected Earth's ships. He remembered Colonel Jin-A Lee, who had trained some of his best officers. Ambassador Hai-Jin Choi had been like a daughter to him. Admiral, what are your orders? Hyan-Woo asked. Dong Hyan opened his eyes. They were hard as steel now. Send this recording to every human colony, every ship, every outpost. Make sure everyone sees what the galaxy really thinks of us. Then come home. We have work to do. Within 6 hours, the execution footage reached every corner of human space. On Mars, factory workers stopped their machines and watched in silence. On the mining colonies at the edge of the solar system, tough men and women who had never cried in their adult lives wept openly. On Luna Base, children asked their parents why the aliens had killed the nice ladies, but it was the reaction on Earth that mattered most. President Subin Han called an emergency meeting of the Human Colonial Council. For the first time in decades, every human leader would speak with one voice. The council meeting took place in Geneva, in the same building where humanity had signed its first peace treaty with the aliens 50 years ago. Representatives came from every human world, every space station, every ship in the fleet. Some traveled for days to be there. President Han stood at the podium, looking out at faces filled with anger and grief. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but her voice carried the weight of an entire species. My fellow humans, she began. Today we have seen the true face of galactic civilization. They invited our best and brightest to a meeting of peace. Instead, they murdered them like animals and broadcast their deaths for entertainment. The room was completely silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to have stopped. Dr. So-Young Park died because she was too smart. Colonel Jin-A Lee died because she was too strong. Ambassador Hai-Jin Choi died because she believed in a future where all species could live together in peace. They died because they were human women who dared to think, to lead, to dream. President Han paused and looked around the room. She saw tears in the eyes of hardened soldiers. She saw rage in the faces of peaceful diplomats. The question now is simple. What do we do about it? General Tae-Ho Kang stood up. He was Earth's most decorated military leader, a man who had never lost a battle. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the anger underneath. Madam President, I have studied our military situation. The Vexstar Empire has 10,000 warships. We have 300. They control 40 star systems. We control 3. Their technology is 50 years ahead of ours. In a normal war, we would be extinct within 6 months. Murmurs of despair rippled through the room. Some representatives looked defeated before the fight had even begun, but General Kang wasn't finished. However, this will not be a normal war. The aliens made one crucial mistake. They showed us that they see us as animals to be slaughtered, not people to be reasoned with. They have freed us from the burden of fighting fair. Dr. Wujin Esio stood up from the back of the room. Most people didn't know him, but those who did looked nervous. Dr. Esio ran the Prometheus Project, Earth's most classified research program. Rumors said they worked on weapons too dangerous to use. Madam President, may I speak? President Han nodded. Dr. Su, please share what you know. The scientist walked to the front of the room. He was thin and pale, like someone who spent too much time in underground laboratories. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but somehow terrifying. For 30 years, the Prometheus Project has been developing weapons that the galaxy would call impossible or immoral. We created them in case humanity ever faced extinction. Today, that day has arrived. Dr. Co activated a holographic display. Images of strange devices and alien symbols filled the air. We have artificial intelligence that can think faster than any organic brain. We have viruses that can be programmed to target specific genetic markers. We have weapons that can manipulate time itself. We have technology that can unmake matter at the quantum level. The room was deadly quiet. Even General Kang looked disturbed. These weapons violate every treaty humanity has ever signed, Dr. Co continued. They cross lines that civilized species do not cross. But the Vexstar have shown us that we are not dealing with civilized species. We are dealing with monsters who murdered diplomats for entertainment. President Han stood up. Dr. Co, are you saying we can actually win this war? No, Madam President. I'm saying we can end it completely, forever. The question is whether humanity is willing to become what we need to become to achieve victory. Representative Minho Kim from the Mars colonies raised his hand. Dr. Co, what exactly are you asking us to do? Dr. Co's eyes were cold as winter space. I'm asking you to authorize the complete destruction of the Vexstar Empire. Not defeat, not conquest, extinction. We will erase them so thoroughly that future archaeologists will find no trace they ever existed. The room erupted in arguments. Some representatives were horrified by the idea of genocide. Others demanded immediate revenge. The debate went on for hours. Finally, Representative Yuna Lim from the outer colonies stood up. She was an old woman who had lost 3 sons in mining accidents. Her voice shook with emotion. I have a question for everyone here. How many of you have daughters? Dozens of hands went up around the room. How many of you have granddaughters? More. Hands rose. Then you know what we're really talking about here? The aliens didn't just kill 3 women. They sent a message to every human female in the galaxy, said that being smart, strong, or hopeful is a crime punishable by death. Representative Lim looked around the room with tears in her eyes. My granddaughter is 10 years old. She wants to be a scientist like Dr. Soyoung Park. Should I tell her to give up her dreams because the galaxy doesn't want human women to think? Should I tell her to hide her intelligence so aliens won't feel threatened? She wiped her eyes and stood straighter. Or should I tell her that her species fought back against monsters who wanted to kill her for being born human and female? The choice is simple. We can die as slaves or we can live as the apex predators we were born to be. The vote was unanimous. President Han signed the authorization order that night. Dr. Co began activating projects that had waited decades for this moment. General Kang started planning operations that would have been war crimes if they were fighting against other humans. But the most important change happened in the hearts and minds of ordinary people across human space. The species that had spent 50 years trying to fit into galactic civilization suddenly remembered what they had been before the aliens arrived. On Earth, a young man named Jamin Park watched the execution footage for the 100th time. So young. Had been his sister, his mentor, his best friend. The grief was eating him alive, but it was also transforming him into something harder and more dangerous. I'm going to kill them all, he whispered to the empty room. Every single one of them. Dr. Mi-kyung Lim was working late in her genetics laboratory when she saw the news. She had been developing medical treatments for human colonists. Began thinking about other applications for her knowledge. She could cure diseases, she could also create them. Lieutenant Sung-ho Choi was Ambassador Hai-jin Choi's son, had joined the military to make his mother proud. She was dead, and he had nothing left to lose. He volunteered for the most dangerous experimental programs the military offered, across human space. The transformation was beginning. The species that had once been peaceful farmers and curious explorers was remembering its true nature. Humans were persistence hunters who had chased mammoths across ice ages. They were the descendants of warriors who had conquered their entire planet with nothing but sharp sticks and stubborn determination. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something that had been sleeping for centuries. Age of human diplomacy was over. The age of human war was about to begin. And this time, humanity would not be fighting to win. They would be fighting to make sure their enemies never existed at all, Captain. Hyun-woo sat in his quarters aboard the new Seoul, watching Earth grow larger on his screen. He thought about Lieutenant Sang-ho Park, who had barely spoken since losing his sister. The young man's grief was turning into something cold and sharp. Soon they would be home. Soon they would begin the work of transforming humanity into something the galaxy had never seen before. The diplomatic mission had failed, but it had also succeeded in ways King Morthok could never have imagined. He had united humanity in a way that 50 years of peace could not. He had given them a cause worth dying for, and more importantly, worth killing for. The war hadn't started yet, but in the minds and hearts of 4 billion humans, it had already been won. The only question now was how much of the galaxy would be left standing when humanity was finished with their revenge. 6 months after the executions, humanity began to change in ways that frightened even themselves. Every human colony became a weapons factory. Every human mind became focused on one goal, making the Vexstar Empire disappear forever. Commander Jamin Park stood in his new laboratory, looking at blueprints for ships that shouldn't exist. His sister So-young had been the peaceful scientist. Now he was something else entirely. The grief had burned away everything soft in him, leaving only cold intelligence and burning hatred. The Ghost Fleet prototype is ready for testing, he told General Kang over the communication screen. We can make our ships exist partially outside normal space-time. Enemy sensors won't detect them until it's too late. The technology was dangerous. 3 test pilots had already died when their ships got lost between dimensions. But Jamin didn't care about safety anymore. Nothing mattered except making the aliens pay. How many ships can you build? General Kang asked. Give me every resource. Earth has, and I can build 1,000 ships that can appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning, Jamin replied. Ships that can strike and vanish like ghosts. Meanwhile, Dr. Mi-kyung Lim was working in a secret laboratory beneath the surface of Mars. Before the executions, she had been a healer, working to cure diseases that affected human colonists. Now she was creating something that would make the Vexstar wish they had never been born.
And the Chimera virus is ready,
she told her assistant, Dr. Changmin.
Wait.
It targets Vexstar genetic markers specifically. Other species won't be affected at all. How does it work? Changmin asked, though. He wasn't sure he wanted to know. Mi-kyung's smile was as cold as the space between stars. It attacks their nervous system slowly. First, they lose their ability to sleep. Then they start seeing things that aren't there. Finally, their brains forget how to keep their hearts beating. The whole process takes about a month. That's torture, not death. Good, Mi-kyung said simply. They tortured our women before they killed them. They'll understand what that feels like. In the outer colonies, Lieutenant Sung-ho Choi was volunteering for experiments that would change him forever. His mother had died believing in peace and understanding. He was choosing a different path. The military scientists were working on biotechnology that could reshape the human body. Stronger muscles, enhanced reflexes, improved healing. But the real changes were mental. They were removing the parts of the brain that felt guilt, fear, and mercy during combat. "Are you sure about this, Lieutenant?" asked Dr. Bio Youngjang, the lead scientist. "These changes can't be reversed. You won't be fully human anymore." Sung-ho looked at a picture of his mother that he kept in his pocket. Ambassador Hijin Choi had died hoping for a better future. Sun would make that future possible by becoming something that could kill without hesitation. "My mother was fully human," he said. "Look what it got her. Make me into whatever I need to be to destroy them." Captain Hyenwoo was also changing, but in a different way. He and the surviving crew of the New Soul had been formed into something called the Vengeance Corps. They were no longer diplomats or explorers. They were hunters, and their prey was everyone who had been in that throne room when the women died. "We have the location of General Coulter," reported Sergeant In-Soo Kim, Hyenwoo's intelligence officer. Is commanding Vexstar forces in the UA Epsilon sector. Hyenwoo studied the tactical display. General Coulter had been standing next to King Morthok during the executions. He had smiled when the women died. "Good. He'll be our first target when the war begins." All across human space, similar preparations were taking place. Ordinary people were volunteering for dangerous experiments. Scientists who had spent their lives healing and creating were learning to destroy. Children were being taught that mercy was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. The galaxy began to notice strange things happening in human space. Ships would disappear near human colonies, only to be found weeks later with their crews dead from unknown causes. Alien traders reported that humans had stopped smiling and started watching them with predatory eyes, but the other species didn't understand what was really happening. Thought humanity was just angry and would calm down eventually. Had no idea that an entire species was transforming itself into something the galaxy had never seen before. 1 year after the executions, humanity struck. But this wasn't the grand space battle that the Vexstar Empire expected. This was something far worse. The first sign of the new war came when Vexstar patrol ships in the outer systems simply vanished. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. No distress signals, no wreckage, nothing. Admiral Mordock of the Vexstar Third Fleet was confused by the reports. How do entire ships just disappear? His question was answered when Commander Jamin Park's Ghost Fleet materialized around his flagship. The human ships appeared out of nowhere, their weapons already firing. But these weren't normal weapons. They unmade matter at the quantum level, creating expanding spheres of absolute nothingness. "What are those things?" screamed Admiral Mordock. As his ship began to dissolve around him, he never got an answer. The Ghost Fleet struck 20 Vexstar positions simultaneously, appearing without warning and vanishing just as quickly. Within hours, the aliens lost 50 ships and 10,000 soldiers. But the real horror was just beginning. On Vexstar colonies across the Empire, people started getting sick. At first, it seemed like a normal virus. Headaches, fever, weakness. But then the symptoms got worse. The infected couldn't sleep. They started seeing their worst nightmares while awake. Children cried constantly while adults screamed at invisible enemies, Dr. Mikyung. Lim watched the reports from her laboratory on Mars. The Chimera virus was spreading exactly as she had designed it. Only Vexstar were affected, but every single one of them would die slowly and in terror. "The virus has reached their capital world," reported Dr. Chang Minyu. King Morthok himself is showing early symptoms. Kyung felt no satisfaction, only cold determination. "Good. Let him experience the fear our women felt before he killed them." Meanwhile, the Vengeance Corps was hunting down everyone who had been involved in the executions. Captain Hyenwoo and his team had been surgically and genetically modified until they were barely human. They could survive in vacuum, heal from wounds that would kill normal people, and feel no mercy for their enemies. General Coulter was hiding in a fortress on the moon of Vex Prime when they found him. He had 1,000 guards and the best defenses alien technology could provide. Didn't matter. The Vengeance Corps moved through the fortress like death itself. They killed every guard, bypassed every defense, and cornered the alien general in his command center. "You're the humans from that diplomatic ship," Coulter said, his 4 eyes wide with terror. "But you, right? What have you become, Captain? Hyen-Woo looked down at the alien who had smiled while watching 3 innocent women die. We became what you made us. Became your nightmares. What happened to General Coulter was recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. The message was clear. Everyone who had participated in the executions would die, no matter where they hid. But the real target was King Morthok himself. General Taeho Kong led the assault on Vex Prime personally, commanding a fleet of ships that existed partially outside normal space. They bypassed every defense and appeared directly above the alien capital. This is General Kong of the Human Colonial Forces. He broadcast to the dying world below. 1 year ago, you executed 3 of our women for the crime of being intelligent and hopeful. Today, you pay the price. The weapons that struck Vex Prime were beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't just destroy the planet, they began unraveling the star itself. The sun started collapsing inward, creating a wave of destruction that would consume the entire system. King Morthok, dying from the virus and watching his empire crumble, sent one final message to the galaxy. We were wrong about the humans. They're not animals. There's something far worse. They're demons wearing human faces. 6 months later, the Vexstar Empire no longer existed. Every world, every ship, every alien who had called himself Vexstar was gone. It was as if they had never existed at all. The galaxy was in shock, their alien species that had once ignored. Humanity now whispered fearfully about the species that had chosen total genocide over surrender. The humans hadn't just won a war, they had erased their enemies from existence. President Subin Han stood in the ruins of what had once been Vex Prime's capital city. The planet was dead now, its star turned into an expanding nebula of destruction. She was addressing the Galactic Federation from the site where 3 human women had been murdered. The Vexstar Empire thought they could terrorize humanity into submission, she said calmly. They were wrong. We are not a species that can be intimidated. We are apex predators who have learned to use tools. And now the galaxy knows what happens to those who threaten our children. The Federation representatives watched in terrified silence. Some species had already begun evacuating their border worlds, afraid that humanity might decide they were threats too. We don't want to rule the galaxy, President Han continued. We don't want to conquer other species. We want to be left alone to build our own future. But if anyone else decides the human women are too dangerous to live, they will discover what extinction looks like. Back on Earth, the survivors of the war were trying to understand what they had become. Commander Jamin Park stood in his laboratory, looking at plans for even more terrible weapons. The Ghost Fleet had worked perfectly, but now he was designing ships that could travel backward in time to kill enemies before they were born. Sir, his assistant asked nervously, do we really need weapons this powerful? The war is over. Amen. Thought about his sister Sa Young, brilliant and kind and dead. The war with the Vexstar is over. But there are other species out there, other threats, and we can never again allow humanity to be vulnerable. Dr. Mi-Hung Lim was working on new viruses, each one more targeted and deadly than the last. She had perfected diseases that could kill specific individuals based on their genetic code. She could now assassinate anyone in the galaxy without leaving Earth. Lieutenant Sung-Ho Choi, now more machine than man, was training new recruits for the Vengeance Corps. Young humans volunteered eagerly for the modifications that would transform them into living weapons. They had seen what happened to species that underestimated humanity. Captain Hyen-Woo found himself struggling with what he had become. The modifications had made him incredibly efficient at killing, but they had also taken away parts of his humanity that he missed. Sometimes he wondered if the cure had been worse than the disease, but then he would remember Dr. Saw Young Park's final words, Colonel Jin Ailey's refusal to kneel, and Ambassador Hai-Jin Choi's belief in a better future. They had died as humans. He had lived as something else so that other human women would never have to face the same fate. The galaxy now operated under new rules. Humanity was no longer the junior species begging for acceptance. They were the apex predators who had shown that they could and would destroy entire civilizations if threatened. 3 months after the war ended, a new alien species made first contact with humanity. The Cathera were peaceful traders who had heard about the destruction of the Vexstar Empire. They approached human space with a diplomatic vessel, hoping to establish friendly relations. Admiral Dong Hanyun watched their ship approach Earth. He was older now, marked by the terrible war he had helped plan and execute. A young officer asked if they should extend the traditional welcome to the aliens. Admiral Yun looked at the memorial wall in his office. It held the names of everyone who had died in the war, but the 3 names at the top were special: Dr. Du Soyoung Park, Colonel Jin A. Lee, and Ambassador Hai Jin Choi. "Send them our new first contact protocol," he said quietly. The message that went out to the Cathara ship was simple and clear. Welcome to human space. The rules are simple. You can trade with us, ignore us, or even dislike us. But if you ever harm a human woman, if you ever decide that our daughters are too smart, or too strong, or too hopeful, we will show you what extinction looks like. We have done it before, we will do it again. The alien ship received the message and immediately turned away. It heard the stories of what happened to the last species that underestimated humanity's capacity for absolute, merciless warfare. The story ended with humanity standing alone in their corner of the galaxy, no longer seeking acceptance or friendship from other species. They had learned that the universe was not a safe place for those who showed weakness. So they had chosen to become something that never needed to show weakness again. The 3 women who died in that throne room had believed in peace, understanding, and cooperation between species. Their deaths had created something entirely different, a humanity that trusted no one, feared nothing, and would commit genocide rather than risk another massacre of innocents. Whether this transformation was a victory or a tragedy was a question that haunted the survivors. But one thing was certain: no one would ever again make the mistake of thinking that human women were too dangerous to live, because now the galaxy knew that human men were far more dangerous when the women they loved were dead.